For everybody that joined, just welcome, first of all. I hope your week has started well. Today is the first week of our GCU HPC software carpentry. We don't know how long it will go. It will depend on how much interest there is and what topics people feel like they want covered. To try and bring everybody along, we're going to start with the basics. So today,
it's okay.
Assuming you're a new user and you've never used the HPC, we're going to, or if you need a refresher, we're going to show you how to access the HPC and then a few bash fundamental commands to navigate the HPC and how to transfer files between your local machine and the HPC using FileZilla, plus mentioning other options that are available to you. Next week will be more on scripting and submitting jobs. And I think the third week is going to be on containers, singularities, and best practices in the HPC taught by HPC people. I think Wayne, if he has time. We haven't confirmed, but most likely. So that's what's going to be covered today. If you're very experienced and you don't need a refresher, maybe today you don't need to attend. We do have recordings for all of this, so this is going to be online. And it's 11:05. So what does everybody think? Should we start with 15 people here? Hello, Casey, Aurelie, and everybody. What do you think, Legana and Natalia? Should we start?
Yeah, I think so.
Why not?
Yes.
Fine.
Okay, I'll take it away then. I'll repeat myself for a second. Welcome to the first week of our GCU software carpentry. Today we will cover what is the HPC, how to access it, and some bash fundamentals on how to navigate the HPC. Bit of a disclaimer at the start and a reminder of what this course is all about. I'm not the most experienced HPC user at GCU, far from it. I'm giving this presentation because I had the time to give them. By all means, feel free to correct, suggest, and contribute. We are producing learning material that I'll show you in a second on our website, which you can contribute to with GitHub. And if you get stuck and don't know how to add your side of the story and suggestions and so on, I can show you the GitHub side of things. I've added some links and Natalia added them again in the chat. The first one is a link to today's lesson, 1 and 2, split between how to access the HPC and bash fundamentals. We then have a FileZilla download for anybody that would like to follow along and try out FileZilla, as well as a link to the alternative option, one of the alternative option being SCP for file transfer. Yeah, so by any means, this course is meant for communicating engagement and developing together resources. So if you do have any input and any experience that would be useful, please feel free to add to it. Welcome, Wayne and Erica. As a reminder and put into words, the course that we have, the course lessons that we have confirmed to some degree so far are today's, where we're covering HPC and bash fundamentals. Next week, we will be covering how to submit jobs on the HPC, going from scripting to the actual job submission stage. And week 3, we haven't confirmed it yet, but if Wayne will have time, we might try and have a session on singularities on the HPC, what resources are available, how to find them, use them, a bit of version control and best practices in the HPC. And then for the weeks to come, there were a few topics raised in the last meeting, like an in-depth look at memory and resource use and allocation, best practice and workflows from experienced users, chatting through the HPC, which was very, a lot of people showed interest, and so on. If you have anything that you want to add, please feel free to mention it in the chat or send us a message or whatever. For today, especially if you're a new user and you want to follow along, there's a few things that you will need. A GCU HPC account, which you should have requested last week. If you request for it now, it won't come through in time. So if you haven't done so yet, I'll try and be as comprehensive as possible so you can still follow along. And you will need either a terminal, which on Mac you can access, I'll show you how to access it, or a command prompt in Windows, which I think in newer version is called PowerShell. Everything that I'll be covering today is recorded with a bit more information on our website, where we have both lesson 1 and 2, which is what we're covering today, and we shared the links for them in the chat. Once again, this is all managed through GitHub, so if you want to implement any additions or modify it, feel free to do so. And if you don't know how to, I can show you. Okay, that's it for the intro. Once again, if you want to follow along, maybe download FileZilla now if you haven't yet, and make sure you have your GCU account set up. Do we have any questions or any comments before I start with today's question, or anybody that wants to say hi?
Maybe if you put in presentation mode so we can see.
Yes, I'm going to try and switch between these and my terminal. But okay.
Oh, okay. Whatever works though.
Can you still see
it? Yeah, we can see your notes though. Like,
okay.
Switch.
I might just leave it as this because I'll have only one slide more and then I'll switch to the terminal. Okay. Can everybody see this slide well? Can you read the content? Fine.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, the purpose of this slide is to show you what the HPC is, if you're unfamiliar with it, and how it is structured. And the HPC is a high-performance research computing resource. And by high performance, we mean that it is much more powerful than your standard laptop, and that's part of why we use it. To access the HPC, we use a SSH type of connection, and I'll go more into it later and as to how you can do that. And once you access the HPC, you're logged in into one of two login nodes, NL-H01 and NL-02. And each of those tools have 40 cores, quite a lot of RAM. And already we can start seeing how they're much more powerful than your average computer. Most of your laptops will have maybe 4 to 8 cores and way less RAM than this. But these login nodes are not for you to run your computationally intensive jobs. The login nodes are for you to, as the name suggests, log in into the HPC, set up your scripts, set up your job, and then through a qsub command, submit this to a server, which then submits them through a scheduler to compute nodes, which are pretty similar in terms of how many, they have the same amount of cores and gigabases, but they're set up explicitly for these like high performance jobs.
So just to interrupt, Lorenzo, it's Wayne here, HPC. So just for people's information, login nodes can be used for test and development. So, you know, if you've never run a job before on a Linux system, you know, even if it's a little bit long, the thing is, if you go and you know, go straight to submitting jobs to the cluster, you're going to have a lot of challenges in front of you. So login nodes are there so that you can work out all the preliminary stuff before you start worrying about the PBS system. So don't fear using login nodes. They're beefy for a reason. They're there for people to actually test and develop jobs that they might submit to the cluster later. That's why they exist. So really the only downside to using login nodes is that when it comes to scheduled maintenance, we don't give you any warning, or they just get taken down. Unlike the compute nodes, where we can say, well, Lorenzo submitted a job, it's going to take another 100 hours to finish. On a login, we have no idea. So we can't control that. So that's the only downside to using a login node. But yeah, by all means, if you're new to HPC, I recommend starting with the login nodes and working out how to run your jobs interactively before you go into PBS. Thanks, Lorenzo.
Awesome. Thank you, Wayne. I really appreciate any input that you might have through the talk. And that was very helpful, so thank you. To start with, assuming that you're a new user and trying to take everybody along, today we will mostly focus on this first step, as in accessing the HPC through SSH, and then playing around in the login nodes, creating our first files, moving them around, understanding how directories work, and how we can transfer files between the HPC and our computers with FileZilla. Next week, we will focus more on writing our scripts, including the PBS scripts that we will then use to submit jobs, and so you know what to expect. So we've been talking a bunch about accessing the HPC. I think it's about time we actually do it. And to achieve this, you will need a terminal or a command prompt. Now, new users, if you, in the link that I shared for the lesson 1, I have in-depth instructions as to how to find them, and I'll go over them quickly now. If you're wanting to follow along and you're getting stuck, please let me know if you cannot find the terminal or the command prompt. Let me reshare my screen. What do I mean with a terminal? This is what a terminal looks like. I'll show you how to access it in Mac. I do not have a Windows, so I cannot show you the equivalent for Windows, but I'll go over it. You can press, I believe it's, yeah, if you press Command and spacebar, you'll have your Spotlight search, and you can simply type terminal, and it will show you the terminal, and a simple double click will open the terminal for you. Let me make it a bit bigger. If you want to make text bigger, Command plus can increase the size. For a Windows user, the easiest way, most computers these days, from the feedback I got, have either command prompt or PowerShell installed, and right-click on the Start menu on the bottom left of your screen will show you the available options. One of them is either command prompt or PowerShell. And if you open it, it will look pretty similar to this. And this is what we'll be using to access the HPC. A reminder, you can only do this if you already have a HPC account set up. And if I want to access the HPC, I'll type the SSH command for secure shell. SSH allows us to have an encrypted connection between our local computer and the server that we want to access, in this case, the HPC. Then you'll have to type your JCE name. So now you know my JCE name, and you can see if I'm using all of the cores on the HPC, and you can name and shame me. And then at zodiac.hpc.gcu.edu.au. Now you can press enter, and you can see that you have this following prompt that asks you to enter your password. I'm going to type my password. You're not going to see it, likely, because for safety reason, it doesn't show as you type it. You just have to trust that you're typing it, type it right, and then press enter. And once you press enter, you'll be presented with the following prompt that tells you that you're now in the HPC. It's key that everybody is up to this stage if you want to follow the next steps. So by any means, if you're a new user and you're not here, this is the time to stop me and ask for help to either me, Natalia, or Legana. Okay. Let me check the chat. Okay. Yomani is asking, how do I switch to Bash? And okay, let's solve these together. First question is from Yomani that asks, my terminal says ZSH. How do I switch to Bash? ZSH is a new Unix language that's somewhat similar to Bash, and you should be able to switch to Bash if you want. But as Wayne says, in the HPC, Bash is going to be our default. So can you please tell us, Yomani, what computer you're on, whether it's on your own computer, and what do you have open, whether it's terminal and you're on a Mac or whether you're on a command prompt. JCU supplied Mac. Okay, that makes sense. Newer Macs, I think, come automatically with ZSH. I'm not sure about this, but
I think it doesn't matter if you
yeah,
type,
I think it doesn't matter.
SSH is like you will get into it. I had that yesterday and it worked. Like there is no issue. I think they are compatible. So just try to type it, and if there is an issue, maybe I can look into it.
So I'm gonna type it, or I'm gonna highlight it. If I think Natalia is right, Yomani. So if you can please try this command, obviously with your JC login, and see if it works. And if not, we can go from there. The other questions we have was from Sunny. I'm on a Unix computer. Will it be that I'm automatically logged in the HPC? I don't think that is the case, Sunny. To check that, we can use one of our first bash commands, which is hostname. If you are indeed logging into the HPC, it should return either ln01 or ln02, which signifies either of the HPC login nodes. If it enters something different, it's most likely that you're not into the HPC yet. Another way to find is to try the SSH command with your JC name and see where that takes you. And if it all works, then you should be logged into the HPC. Please have a go and let me know if you have any more questions. Yomani, let me know if you managed to make it work. Christina, bed forwarding specification.
Hi, Lorenzo. Sorry, I'm just here with Yomani. We're up in Cairns. So I've got my computer. So I opened the terminal the same way that you did, and it had the -DHS or ZSH instead of bash. And instead of having the whatever the 111622 with the $ thing, it's already got my JC number and the computer that I have. So I wasn't even able to type on a new line the SSH, my JC number at the zodiac.hpc. Like I wasn't able to, I don't know, maybe it's just something I'm doing completely wrong.
Can you perhaps share your screen?
Yes, one second.
Can you type anything on your?
I can type it here. Yeah, I'll just open the Zoom on my computer. We had split it across two, so we can try and work it. Just give me 1 second.
And for Christina, I don't know. I don't know how the PowerShell works. Vegana? No.
I think today is very important that we get this step all right. So if you're having an issue, if you can share a screenshot of what you're encountering while we help other people.
It's Wayne again. I predominantly use a Mac, so I can't provide too much help with Windows. But when I have had to use Windows, I use Puddi, Putty, which probably comes on standard as on JC computers, but it's a quick download, and that's what I use as the method into HPC. It provides the SSH terminal type setup for you. in a GUI. The other option is there's a bash extensions for Windows that you can get, which is basically like a Linux sub-environment in Windows. But that's probably only for advanced users. So I would recommend Puddi rather than PowerShell or other things. As I said, I'm a Mac user, not a Windows user.
Thank you, Wayne. I think that is the case of most of us, unfortunately.
Okay, sorry. So this is
the other Wayne's a Windows user. So yeah, if anyone needs help on the Windows front, you can always contact Wayne.
I shared the link for Puddi on the chat, Christina, if you want to try and follow that. That's probably the simplest solution. MobiX term, which Riley recommended, is apparently very good, as it also gives you other options like FTP, like file transfer protocol. So by any means, if Windows users want to try that out, I think that's usually highly recommended from Windows users. But maybe for the sake of today, Puddi could be a good start. So maybe if Windows users that are struggling could try and install Puddi and go from there, that could be a good start. Okay, we have a screen share. Let's see.
Who is the screen?
This is mine. We're up in Cairns.
Okay.
So you can see up here. This is what it opened with.
Oh, that's okay.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's because it's a university computer.
Exactly.
Your username in the computer is your JC number.
Okay.
While mine is Lorenzo, because when I bought my laptop and I entered my name, it was Lorenzo. But yeah, that's not an issue per se, and I believe you're within your Mac terminal at that stage. Now let's see why it's not working.
Yeah, and now you just have to put your password. See, it's asking for your password.
Now I can't type anything.
Oh yeah, like it will not show anything. You have to put your password and then put enter.
Okay.
Yeah. So connection closed.
That's probably just timeout. Just try again.
It was timeout. Can you repeat the whole code, like the SSH?
So just from this again?
Yep.
Yeah, and once you get to enter your password, type it at once, even if you don't see what's happening. It is typing it, and then press enter, and that should work. Yeah, well done.
Yeah, okay. Yay. Great. Thank you so much.
No worries. We're here for that.
Okay, who else had trouble? Christine.
I think Christina is trying with Puddi, and we had Raf was having a warning, which I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, me neither. Raf, did you manage to enter or not?
Yeah, I managed to enter, and I could do the PS and hostname command. So, I mean, usually I ignore warnings, but I just wanted to know if it's something to be concerned about.
That's an account specific thing. I mean, you can change the locale and or set a locale to, for instance, let's say, you want to use something other than English, you can change your locale to match the language you want to use. So I can't do anything like from a HPC point of view globally. However, you can do that. That's probably more complex than you need to worry about at this stage. That's more like a third meeting or fourth meeting thing. For now, I wouldn't worry about it unless you have problems doing anything in that window or in that connection.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Thank you.
Great. What about Sonny? Did you manage Sonny? Sonny.
Yeah, she managed.
Yeah. Okay. And Christina?
I think she's in the process, so maybe we can give her a second. And in the meantime, she's trying to use Puddi. While we wait for Christina, just for Windows experienced Windows user here, I don't know if you are too, but Riley and Reese had good recommendations for Windows user. I would really like your help or input for the lesson material on our website. So maybe afterwards or in the next weeks or whatever, I could really use your help to set up the Windows side of things. That's just a side note. I'm gonna go get my charger while we wait for Christina, and then we can continue.
Host name, I think it's, let me check. Maybe Wayne knows from the top of his head.
What?
Christina is asking, what is the host name and the port to put it?
That's the Zodiac that Lorenzo mentioned before. Zodiac.hpc.jcu.edu.au. You don't need to enter a port, the default port will work.
Okay.
Wayne, while we wait, do you have any input about what the best way is for people to add their SSH key to the HPC for those that want to, so they don't have to put in passwords? What's the best practice for you? What do you think?
So I don't know whether it's for this session, but you basically, in your HPC account, will be a directory created called .ssh. It's like a period SSH. In that directory, there should be a file authorized _keys, and you basically paste your key that you create in there. Now, one thing to realize, that's what they call passphrase based authentication. So you can actually set up a passphrase on your local machine and use that to authenticate you, along with the keys that you create when you do that key creation. So it is, when you're accessing systems, it's probably the most secure, well, sorry, it's not probably, it is the most secure way to use SSH. One, you're not passing any credentials, even if, even unencrypted. Even if they were encrypted, you're not passing anything over the network. All your authentications, your passwords just on your local machine. Encryption is great, but there's no guarantee that the encryption that's solid now remains solid in 6 months' time.
Great, thank you.
Christina, I think you might be missing the SSH in front of JC, if that's what you type. Thanks, Wayne. And Pete, thank you also, Pete. Visual Studio Code is definitely a good option, and I linked in my lectures to a blog post from Moitama on how to use it if anybody is interested. Okay, sorry for everybody that's more experienced today. I think this is a key step for many users to get going, so that's why we're spending so much time on it. But I think Christina is nearly done, and then we can move on.
Sorry, hi, do you hear me?
Yeah.
So I've tried with H and it doesn't work either. I tried with a space, with a point, with a dot.
Would you like to share your
Maybe
screen?
share your
If
screen.
it's all right.
So I add this.
No, don't.
Oh, there you have to take out. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, take out all these things. Yeah, get rid of that, and then hit open.
No, so this.
That's weird.
I think
go back to the
JCU is missing from it. So it's hpc.jcu.edu.au.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
So
here?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then get rid of your bit.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, go down to that save sections. So under the save sessions, type in HPC. And then hit save. Now, like next time you come in, you can then just click the HPC and go open.
Okay. Yeah.
And that should bring up a window. Should. Yeah, just hit yes. You can. I've got all these keys if you really want to be worried about security.
Yeah.
You can actually verify that they're the right keys. Now you do.
Okay.
Now you just do your JC number, JC blah blah blah, and your password.
Okay. That's it. Okay. Great. Now, perfect.
You have to type
Christina?
at once. Yeah,
I don't know what happens.
It won't show up.
It's
it will not
It's-
show.
Oh.
It's a security feature.
I think you just entered it wrong. So yeah, try and enter it at once and press enter. It is typing even if you
Okay,
don't
okay.
see it.
Okay. No, okay. I'll check. I'll
Looks
check.
good.
I have to think about my password.
Okay.
Okay.
I might, if you're right with that, I
Yeah.
might share the screen, Christina, and
Okay.
proceed. And yeah,
Thank you. Am I still sharing? Sorry.
yeah, thank you. Da-da-da. Okay, so by now, apart from Christina remembering your password, we should all be at the stage and we should be logged in into the HPC. If you type hostname, it should tell you what login node you're in. And if you type who am I, it should tell you your JC number. All this information is already in the prompt. I can see my login number at login node 1, and you can see that these are just sequential number telling you what command it is in the session. And this tilde at the start represents the current directory you're in. That's pretty useful, especially as you move forward and start scripting, to remember that this tilde refers to your home directory, which means your folder with your JC name. How do I know which directory I might be in? There's the command pwd for print working directory. That tells me that I'm within the home directory, and within this home directory, there is a folder with my JC number. And this is the folder that you have access and permission to. That's what creating your GCU account resulted in. And this is where you're going to store your scripts and your files and your output and so on. Now that we are in this folder, and I'm now going to show you a few commands that you can use to create directories in this folder, move this between this directory, and see what's in these directories through the HPC bash, through this prompt. Later, I'll show you also ways to look at these in a different ways through FileZilla, but I think this is probably a good start. So I'm in my home directory, this folder called JC27, blah, blah, blah. I want to see what's in this directory. I can use the ls command for list files. And upon typing this, I can see all of my different folders for all of my different projects. If you've just created this account, you will be returned with nothing because you don't have anything in there so far. So maybe your first step of using the HPC will be to create a directory where to store your project files. You can see here that I've got all my different directories. Let's make one together. And to do this, you can use the mkdir command, mkdir, followed by the name of the directory that you want to create. And you can call it how you want. I'll call it codart project. Make sure not to have spaces in your file name. And remember that within bash, everything is case sensitive. So if I typed, for instance, make dear with a capital K, it will not know what that command is. And that's because the command is all spelled with lowercase letter. Now, if I type ls again, I can see that my codart project folder is now present within my home directory. And if I want to see what's inside that folder, I can once again use the list file, followed by the directory I want to look for files in. And because I just created this folder, it is now empty. It is empty for now. So what are we doing here? We're using commands like ls and make dir and pwd. And this command all follow a certain structure within bash, where you have your command, like could be head, followed by a set of options that are usually preceded by a short dash, followed by the argument for that command. So for instance, this could be the file name that I want to use the head command with. If you're familiar with R, this command is much similar to what you will type in R with head and the two parentheses. So this is the general structure of commands within bash. And if you're ever unsure of how to use these commands or what options are required, there's a number of ways to get help. One of them is to look at the manual for that command. For instance, I might want to see how to the different option for ls. I can type man, which in this case is my command, and the argument to it is ls. And this will open up a nice manual with the name of this command, a quick synopsis as how you need to write it for it to work. And it tells us that you need to type the command ls followed by the options, if you have any, followed by the file or file path. And if you scroll down, you can see that there are a number of options for ls. Some that I myself really like to use, for instance, are L, and I'll show you in a second what that does. And here it states use the long listing format, as well as H for human readable. How do these modify the behavior of ls? Let's get out of this manual and look at it. And you can see here to quit, you simply need to press Q. So by any means, please try and run this command with ls and see how it behaves, and also try and get out. I'll quickly check the chat. Yeah, good reminder by Pete. I'll cover that in a second. So we saw these two arguments that we want to use with ls, these two options that we want to use with ls. The first one was L for long, listing the format in listing the output in a different ways. Let's see what that produces. And we can see now that we have more information to our output of ls. We know, for instance, once again, we know the name of the folder. We know when it was produced in terms of month, day, and time. We know the size, and this is a bit misleading because this is all folder, but if you had files, it will tell you the individual size of the files. And we also have, very important here at the beginning, a set of permissions for that file, where R stands for read, W stands for write, and X stands for execute. And we have these repeated 3 times because they are at 3 levels. I believe that, please correct me, Wayne and Peter or anyone else, because I'm not too sure, but I believe the middle one is the user. This one is the admin. And
first 3 are the user or owner, sorry. Yeah. The second 3 are the group. And the third 3, the final 3 is everyone. So you should never have a write in everyone. In that last field, you should never have more than R-X.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Wayne, for the correction. I appreciate you being here. So this is how we can modify the behavior of our commands with options like the L here. And for a command like L, you can have these options next to each other, like LH, where LH makes number that might be hard to read into a more human-friendly version. So here, instead of having 4 billion, you might have 4 gigabases. And you can see here how that was translated to 4.0. So we now know how to see what's in our directories. We know how to create directories. Let's start making this directory more useful and directed towards our needs. And to do this, we want to enter our Codar project directory so that we can start creating files within it. And to do that, we use the cd command for change directory, followed by the directory we want to change our directory to. And you can either type it like this, and we can see here that we're now in the Codar project directory. If I do pwd for print working directory, it tells me now the full path going from my home directory, jc blah, 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 to Codar project. And as we saw before, this directory is empty. There's nothing in it. And what I usually like to do with my directories is have a set of folders for the different files that I'll be using. So I'll start making directories accordingly. I might have one for my scripts, I might have one for my raw data, and I might have one for outputs. And if I do the ls command again, I can see now that I have these 3 directories within my Codar project. And a bit more on the cd command for change directory. Say I've been working on this Codar project for a while, but I now want to switch to another project. And maybe this Codar project has a lot of subdirectories. If I quickly want to switch to my home directory, I can simply use the cd tilde command, where tilde is the argument that tells me that I want to change my directory to my home directory. And if I run this, here it says tilde. And if I look at what directory I'm in, I'm now in my home directory, which is called with my GC number. This is very useful, and it will get very useful, particularly in the next sessions, and as we start writing scripts and we want to make paths to our scripts that are absolute and robust, and that will make more sense next week. Oh yeah, I think Pete pointed it out before. A lot of time we're gonna have we're gonna be pretty tired with typing our project folder over and over again. A very useful option is that if I start typing the start of my folder that I want to change my directory to, and I press the tab command, it autofills it if there's no possible alternatives solution. And I'll show you what that means. Let's look at my folder. I've got a bunch of folders that start with 20. If I type cd and I start with 20 and I press tab, it's not going to automatically fill it. If I press it again, it's going to show me all the available options. And this can be an incredibly time-saving shortcut for a lot of your work. In this case, I only have one directory that starts with COD. So when I press tab, it automatically fills in to get me into that directory. And I'm now within the Codar project directory. Now, I've been mumbling a lot and jumping around a lot. So for new users, please tell me if there's anything that's unclear, anything that you'd like to cover again. Let us know if you were able to follow along and do what I just did yourself. And also, Christina, if you were able to log in finally. We'll get to that in a second, Sunny. Oh, awesome. Christina is up to date. And is everybody able to follow along so far? Yeah, I don't hear any no. I don't see any shaking heads, so I'll assume that you're following along. I hear some background noises. No. Okay, because someone asked for it, let's then go into how we want to delete folders. And Natalia immediately mentioned you should never delete directories. And I have a bit of a cautionary story. Once I once deleted a whole project folder by using the command that I'm about to show you in the wrong way. And the HPC does not have a bin or a trash where like your deleted files go temporarily in case you did a mistake and you want to recover them. So if you delete a file, it's gone forever. Do be very careful how you delete files and how you use the rm command. So say I'm done with this coder project folder. I didn't like the project, it didn't go anywhere. I would like to delete this folder and never think of it again. I'm sure 100% that I don't want to use it. Then I would go in the parent directory for simplicity, as in I'm now in my home directory. And I want to remove this folder with the rm command. I type rm and the directory name, and it's not going to work, telling me it's the directory. And that's because we need to add a very dangerous option, which is R for recursive, meaning it's not only going to delete this, it's going to delete everything that's inside in a recursive manner. And if I type this now, it should have successfully deleted my folder. And if I look in my folders now, it's not there anymore. Please be careful with this, especially once you get more to use it more and you start using wildcards and so on for the rm command, you can lose a lot of work. I lost 3 months at once. It wasn't fun. And thank you, Wayne, once again. Apparently there's a better command to use than rm with the r command, which is remove dir. That will warn us. Additionally, if you want to be on the safe side, you can always add the I option to your command, which will ask if, I'll show you what that means. Let's create our directory again, called our project. We make the command. If I look at it, it's there again. And now I want to remove it. And if I add the, I'll need R to remove the directory for recursive, and I. And if I try and remove this folder, it's now gonna ask me, remove directory, and I can type yes, if I'm sure, or I can be like, oh no, that's my whole project, type no, and retain it. So some people have these in all of the remove commands. It's up to you, just please be careful. I don't wanna be responsible for you losing all of your work. So we made a directory, which is our code, our directory. And I'm gonna quickly remake the folders from before. Now we might want to start populating this directory with the files that we're gonna be using throughout our analysis. And to do this, well, there's other options like VS Code, which I think because of the interest we might cover in later session. There's also text editors that are available within the HPC itself. There's a number of them. There's Vim, and there's Nano, and there's V. I won't cover V and Vim because I personally don't like them. But if other people have different options or why we should use those, please feel free to mention them. I use Nano, so for now I'll cover Nano as one of your possibilities. And Nano is a text editor, much like the Notepad or your Mac or text edit on Windows, with the difference that is that not have a graphical user interface. We'll still use it all within the HPC. And to do this, we type nano, and then we type the name of the file that we want to produce. And maybe I have this new project and I want to make a metadata file to remind myself what this project is about and what files are within it. So to create this file, I simply type nano, followed by the name of the file that I want to create, in this case, metadata, and I press enter. And you can see now that we are within Nano version 2.3.1, and we have a blank new file. And I can start typing. For instance, I can go like, this is the metadata file for folder called our project. Directory raw data contains the raw data I produce in this and that way. Directory scripts contains all the scripts I used for analysis. And one of the questions we had in terms of possible lessons for this course was good workflows and good practices. And I think having this kind of structure in my projects with script folder, raw data folder, and output folder, and nice metadata file is something I cannot recommend enough. So if you feel like this could be useful for you, please adopt it. So I've typed my, I populated my file with text. I might want to go back to this and introduce more info, and I try and double click here. It's not going to work because that's not how Nano works. I'm only going to type where this gray rectangle is. And if I want to move along, I'll have to use arrows. And that's why some people might prefer to use something like Studio Code on your local machine, because it still allows for that point and click functionality, while these, especially on long files, can be a bit hard. And there's a number of shortcuts that can help you navigate Nano files that you can learn, but if that's not your path, just stick to something like Visual Studio Code. I've got a couple of comments in chat. Okay, another option is Emacs on the HPC, and it takes quite a bit to learn. So maybe if there's interest, we can have a session on either of these text editors, or maybe comparison between the three. We created these files. Now we want to go back to our folder, close this file and save it. And we have options underneath that tell us how to do this. In this case, to exit this file, we just press Ctrl X. And it's going to ask us whether we want to modify it. And to save it, we just type yes, or sorry, we just type Y. And then it asks us if we want to modify the file name. Maybe I like capital letter and I type metadata, or maybe I just leave it as is. And you press enter. And if I now look at my folder, I can see that I now have a metadata file. And you can see that it's being colored differently from the folders to highlight that this on the left is a file and these are folders. And I can see how large is this file, in this case, 190. And we have now created our first file within the HPC. Yeah, I'm going to cover head and cat and so on Legana in a second. Another thing that Legana mentioned is that you can create files with the touch command. For instance, I might want to create my first script. I can do that with touch, and I want it in the scripts directory. I'll communicate that to the command by adding the path to the script directory in front of the file name, and then my first script, and maybe it's an R script, and I add R at the end. And to check whether that worked, I can look at the files within the scripts folder with the ls command, and I now have my first file there, which if I look at, it's empty. How can I look what's the content of a file? A very quick way is to either use the cat command or the head command. The cat command will print the whole content of a file. So if I type, for instance, cat and metadata, I'll see the whole content of my metadata files. But sometimes I might have very large files. Maybe it's a FASTA file with like thousands and thousands of lines, and I just want to check the first few lines to check whether it's correct and it's not correct. I might use the head command, just like I will do in R, if you're familiar with R. And maybe I just want to look at the first two lines. So I'm going to use the option N I'm going to provide the argument 2 to the option n, and after that, I need to tell it what file I want to look at. And you can see here that it showed the first 2 lines. I can also look at the last 2 lines if I want to, in the exact same way. And because the last 2 lines were empty, as you can see here, I get nothing. If I type the last 3 lines, we will capture also this text line here. How is everybody online going with it? Were you able to follow along and create your own files and look at them? Do you have any questions? Does anyone of the more experienced user want to add anything onto what I've covered so far? Okay, I've not encountered that problem, Wayne, but I'll keep an eye out for it. Yeah, I'll show you how to create the file. And Natalia, I'm not sure why it didn't work for you. Maybe check. Okay, a bit of troubleshooting before I show Christina again. Say I want to see why my touch command is not working. One of the first ways to do that is maybe check. This touch should be there, but just check that when you run touch, it doesn't return the command not found. For instance, if I type touch with a capital T, it might tell me command not found. The top one instead tells me the touch exists, and maybe if I want a quick start guide on how to use it, I could type touch help, and it will show me a quick start guide on non-interactive one, in this case, on how to use touch, including a bunch of the options I can use and the syntax for touch. Answering your question, Christina, to create your file, we've covered two options today. One is touch, where we type touch and then my new file, the name of your file name. Maybe you want it to be a text file, or maybe you don't need an extension. So just touch and the name of the file, press enter. And if you look in our directory, we now have the file there. But because we just created it, my new file, it is currently empty. I'm going to go ahead and remove it and show you how you can instead create it with the nano option. My new file. And in this case, it's going to open the text editor. This can be counterintuitive at the start for a new user. What you're basically doing with this command is the same as opening a new notepad, opening notepad on your computer. This is what you have in front of you. It's an empty file where you can type different lines, remove them, and save your files for later use. This is my beautiful new file. And I'm going to go ahead, Control X to save it, press yes, and press enter to confirm the file name. And now if I look at my new file, it has this line that I entered in it. I just noticed that it's 12. We took a lot of time to cover things in detail, and I'm happy that everybody shared their issues and was able to follow along. Comments wise, yes, I think we will try, maybe, I don't know if they're included in the recording. I don't think so. Sunny?
I usually just paste a chat and just copy the chat and paste it as a comment underneath a YouTube video.
Yep, that sounds like a good idea. Answering Julia, yes, you can write your PBS job script. You can write any kind of file. And the reason why that is because you're just using plain text. And as long as you follow the formatting required to your CSV file, to your PBS job script, to your R script, to your fast structure input file, you can create any file you want. And we'll cover that in detail next week. We'll show you how to create a PBS job script and how to create an R script to submit with your PBS job script. Emma, have I not missed any questions? Doesn't look like it. This session goes from 11 to 12, so I don't want to take too much time from people. There's still a lot more that I could have covered, but I think today was successful as we were all able to experience some issues together and figure them out as we were going. So maybe I'll leave these last few minutes to any questions or additional information that people would like to share. Maybe some very fundamental comments that I didn't cover that everybody should know. I'll stop sharing quickly. And let's see.
I think it was really useful, Lorenzo. By the way, my touch error was a typo. So like make sure that you check what you type every time.
Everything that I covered today, as I mentioned before, is in these 2 lectures. The one is how to access the HPC, and the second one, if it will let me, is a bit of bash fundamentals. And I have included at the end a list of useful comments that I found myself using, and with a short description. If there is interest to create a list of such comments that are more HPC usage specific, I'd be happy to help you do that and maybe create an individual post for that. We have not covered FileZilla or SCP. We might try and do that in the next session. Okay, I'll stop yapping and maybe stop yapping, and if anybody has feedback or questions.
I guess I have one question. Is there a need to like log out from the session?
Oh yeah, I think if you close, it's gonna terminate the session by itself. But if you want to log out, you press. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Good point. Thank you, Raf. You exit the session by tapping exit, not exit. And then it will tell you that your connection to the JCU HPC was closed. And if I now look at host name, I would say that I'm not in the HPC anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. If anybody has more questions regarding the topics covered today or follow-ups on it, please feel free to